And welcome on in to the next NHL season preview show. Today we are talking all about the Winnipeg Jets and their 2023-2024 season outlook. And with me again is Ian Cameron at Cabano. Of course, make sure to give him a follow. The link to his Twitter is in the description below. But we will jump in right to it here and take a look at the additions and subtractions for the Winnipeg Jets here in the offseason. And obviously, the big news of the offseason was the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to LA. And I, it's very early. And obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois will definitely help the Kings. But I really like what Winnipeg got in this trade. I really like Velarde. I follow Kupari. Three young guys for one, basically. And I really think it was a great trade for the Jets. Um, Maybe not this year, but definitely in the upcoming years. I think the Jets won that trade. Blake Wheeler was bought out, so he's obviously gone. David Riddick is gone. A couple depth guys there. Laurent Brossoit is back in Winnipeg after playing in Vegas last year. And they also signed Colin Delia as well. So they added two goalies, maybe hinting at something with Connor Hellebuck. There's been rumors from the end of last year about Hellebuck and about Mark Scheifele. So we'll have to see what happens there. But Ian, additions and subtractions for the Jets. What do you think about that big trade with Pierre-Luc Dubois to the LA Kings?
Well, you never want to have to trade a top two center, and obviously that's what Pierre-Luc Dubois can be, but he can also be someone that we keep thinking should play better than he often does. And to get what they got, as you mentioned, in return for Pierre-Luc Dubois was excellent. We've been huge Gabe Velarde fans, certainly last year, especially early in the season when I thought the pricing just was totally off. All those times we took him as goal scorer props in the plus 300 range before finally, I think people and odds makers caught on to just how good of a goal scorer he was. It's a great return in that trade. Iafallo is a very, very good player who can play top six. He can even slide down to the third line and be very, very effective for you. Rasmus Kupari, I still think there's a high ceiling there. Now, I think consistency and maybe lack of ice time, lack of opportunity on a pretty good LA team was part of the reason why he didn't maybe develop as quickly as people thought, but I think he'll get more opportunity, much more opportunity now here with the Winnipeg Jets. So I like Kupari being thrown into that. As far as the subtractions, it was time to part ways with Blake Wheeler and move on. And obviously he was the captain of the team for a very long time, had a great career, but his offensive numbers, have declined just a bit. But at the end of the day, he was a big part of the leadership group, which essentially crumbled in that playoff series against the Vegas Golden Knights. That was such a bad series ending loss that Rick Bowness had that infamous tirade at the end of that series, talking about just his team's lack of will, if you will, in that game. David Riddick is what he is. I'm not fond of that, as we know. We always joke Big Civ Dave the whole bit, but not exactly someone that I'd be rushing to take in the put in the goaltending depth chart, if you will, for the Winnipeg Jets. And Sam Gagner, we'll see, because he's on a PTO for them. Let's see how it plays out. But I think there's still a little something in the tank for Gagner. Like, he's obviously, top six forward days are behind him. He's going to play a depth role. He'll play on your third or fourth line, but he knows how to play both ends of the ice, can chip in a little bit offensively. So I don't mind them taking a shot on Sam Gagner.
Oh, so he's not quite a subtraction yet. I might have jumped the gun there with the PTO, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens there.
Oh, sure.
Um,
You know what? My bad. I screwed up there. He's on a PTO with Edmonton, not
oh,
Winnipeg.
okay,
He's on a
okay.
PTO with
Oh,
Edmonton.
so
Yeah.
going back to Edmonton. Hey, that's
There
where
you
he had
go.
that big
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
That's where he had that big
Yeah.
5-goal game, I believe it was.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not with
His
the
first
Jets.
years.
PTO with Edmonton for Sam
Oh,
Gagner,
okay, okay.
his former team. Yeah.
Looking at upcoming free agents here in the next segment, and of course the two pictures of the two guys I have there, as I mentioned briefly, both unrestricted free agents, Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck. Um, I don't really know what to predict for either of those guys. It really sounded like Hellebuck was leaving, but now things are kind of sounding like he's willing to hear Winnipeg out and possibly consider re-signing. So obviously, if Winnipeg starts to go downhill this year, if they're clearly not making the playoffs, I could see them continuing with what they did with the LA trade, which is getting young, and I could see them moving on from Hellebuck and Scheifele. Um, Connor Hellebuck, at his stage of his career, with his current resume, could definitely get you a very nice return. I'm sure would be multiple teams lining up to trade for Connor Hellebuck. So Winnipeg could potentially, if they go down the rebuild route, could do it pretty quickly, um, getting rid of Hellebuck and Scheifele. Cole Perfetti, RFA, you definitely want to re-sign him. Nino Niederreiter, we'll see what happens with him. But if Winnipeg's trying to compete, maybe they'll keep him another year. If they go down the rebuild route, he'll probably be gone at the trade deadline. And Logan Stanley, you want to keep around. Capobianco, you just want to keep the young guys. I think is the main thing for Winnipeg here. Continue to get younger, and I think that's probably the route they'll go. But trading Connor Hellebuck will never be easy, and I could see a situation where they do keep him. Mark Scheifele, the writing's been on the wall there for a bit. I don't think he has any interest in resigning, especially with Lowry getting the captaincy and Scheifele not. I could see him being a little pissed off about that. So we'll have to see how that goes, I guess. But Ian, what do you think here of coming free agents for the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Scheifele's a big mystery. There was chatter all summer about he might be traded, might be dealt, not happy. Well, nothing yet. Now, either he's had a change of heart, which I doubt, or, Kevin Cheveldayoff said, I don't see anything good enough yet to pull the trigger on a Mark Scheifele trade. So as of now, we got to treat it like he's with this team. We'll start the season with them, but that could change. I wouldn't be shocked if we're coming to opening night for the Jets in October and he's no longer a Jet. That could still be a possibility, but definitely have to wait and see. Certainly Nino Niederreiter. I think you're going to, this is another candidate where I think you're going to see a really good opportunity to bet player props this season with Nino Niederreiter. He's going to be on the second line. He's going to get opportunities, power play, 5-on-5. A lot of opportunities to make an impact offensively. You've got that playing for a contract type of situation, which always players want to really deliver the goods and produce in their contract year. And that's certainly there for Niederreiter this year for the Jets. Dylan on the back end, I think I could see them maybe not opting to re-sign him in the offseason. A little older player. It's been there a while. He's effective he's a limited defenseman, but, he's more just take care of your own end, but he's pretty solid at that, adds a physical presence as well. But there's probably going to be other pressing matters for Winnipeg. Dylan DeMello, actually, when he's been healthy, I don't mind his game whatsoever. But again, the big questions about durability have been creeping up. DeMello, it seems every year there's some injury that ends up hurting him a little bit in terms of his availability for an entire season. Of course, you've got goaltending. We kind of thought Connor Hellebuck might be on the move as well during the summer. He's, as of right now, still a member of the Winnipeg Jets. But again, don't rule out the possibility of him, being dealt before the deadline. That being said, he still could start the season here with Winnipeg. Doubtful that he'd be re-signed long-term. But at the same time, Connor Hellebuck is still, when he's on his game, one of the better goaltenders in the NHL. You're going to have to try to make a move at the deadline, get something in return if you don't feel you're going to be signing him long-term beyond this season. So that's definitely the mantra that Kevin Cheveldayoff's going to have to solve here. I like the addition. Look, I actually like Laurent Brossoit in, David Riddick out to me. When you look at the situation here for the Winnipeg Jets, as far as the backup goalie is concerned, it's an upgrade. I think Brossoit showed some really bright performances with the Vegas Golden Knights, played well. Remember how well he was playing before he got hurt, and it's only because he got hurt that Adin Hill got in there in the playoffs for Vegas, and the rest was history. So I actually think it's an upgrade in the backup role, getting Brossoit and punting on David Riddick. as far as I'm concerned. So I like that. They bring in Colin Delia as well, just for a little insurance, kind of like what the Leafs did with Martin Jones, a guy that may not start the season with the big club, with the NHL team, but if he plays in the AHL, he's a third goalie who's got experience and he gives you depth at that position. So very similar situations. Delia with Winnipeg as their number 3, like with Toronto bringing in Martin Jones. And both of these guys aren't great. Let's be real. Delia is not a goalie that I'm trusting night in, night out to make the big saves and win hockey games. Same thing with Martin Jones. But, they give you organizational depth at the goaltender position. So I understand why Winnipeg brought in Delia, like I said, much like Jones with Toronto. I would say Brossoit, if he has a good year, I could see them giving him a short-term extension, after that. Delia is probably a one and done, probably in my opinion for the Jets as far as his contract status. But obviously, this is a team where there's still so much up in the air. Is Mark Scheifele going to start the season with the Jets? Is Hellebuck going to start the season with the Jets? And if both of those guys do, are they going to finish the season with the New York Jets? Probably a good chance that doesn't happen. So there are a lot of balls in play, if you will, for the Winnipeg Jets as far as their organizational free agent chart is concerned.
And I have to think with Hellebuck, Stevie Y in Detroit, if there's one team I think that should possibly go after Hellebuck, it could be Detroit. So obviously they probably sent Husso back in some kind of deal with there, but and another dark horse that I mentioned when I did the future video here coming up with Ryan after the video here with Ian is Seattle. I think the Kraken could Hellebuck could do really well in Seattle. I think if they went after him, so definitely
Devils
will
and
have
Sabres
great.
have been linked to Hellebuck, but nothing yet.
Yeah, Buffalo as well. That could be
Yeah.
that could be dangerous as
Hell,
well
the
if you went
Devils
there.
too, because you don't trust Schmidt, and nor should you right now. Schmidt and Vanacek. We still have to see a lot more.
Yeah, the Devils have 5 goaltenders, so we'll definitely get to that. I posted on Twitter with I'm shocked with how many goalies the Devils have. So somebody's got to step up for one of those 5 guys. But moving on along to the next segment here is possible lineup for the Winnipeg Jets, and the top line shouldn't really surprise anybody with Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers. Perfetti, Velarde, Iafallo. On the second line, Niederreiter with Captain Lowry and Appleton. And then the fourth line there, Barron, Kupari, and Nemestikov. Um, Compared to what other teams have, a very young team. I'm really interested in that second line. Definitely player props in that second line. I'll be looking at the top line. Will be overpriced. I think we'll get value with the second line at least early on. But looking at the team overall, um, I think they're one of the weaker teams in the Western Conference overall. Morrissey is going to have a big year on defense. The defense is, I don't know. The defense has question marks. I think they could be really good, but they could also not be. So kind of torn in the defense. I don't really know what to make of it coming into this year. And then Hellebuck, yeah, if he's still here, he gives Winnipeg a chance to win almost every night. So overall, the Jets are kind of an interesting team where I'm not quite sure what to make of them yet, but definitely that second line I'll be looking at for player props heading into the season. Ian, what do you think about this possible lineup here for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, of course, the news this week, the big news is Adam Lowry named captain of the Winnipeg Jets. And you talk about just in terms of people, the kind of person, the kind of player, the kind of man you'd want as a captain. That's Adam Lowry, man. He does everything in the community. He is a heart and soul player. His work ethic is constant, even when the team's not playing well. He'll chip in offensively. He's an outstanding penalty killer. He can play in every situation. He'll drop the gloves to support a teammate and stick up for them. He'll do everything for you. He is just an outstanding choice just as a person, the way he conducts himself as a professional, hockey player. Terrific, I think, choice there. Adam Lowry as a captain of this team. But Adam Lowry can't do it all. I mean, when you look at last year, Ehlers, another year plagued by injuries. Can he maintain health for 82 games? Scheifele, we know a disenchantment with him and this Winnipeg franchise last year. If he does start the season with the Jets, are you going to get buy-in from Mark Scheifele? That's a real question mark, because I know he wasn't thrilled with things down the stretch, and I don't think he was overly thrilled with his coach's comments too. Of all the players that really took issue with what Rick Bowness said after the Vegas exit in the playoffs, it was him. So how's that dynamic going to work if he starts the year with the Jets? Connor, is a obviously terrifically talented elite goal scorer, and he'll probably have a big year. But can you get Perfetti stepping up to that level that they're hoping? They expect him to be a consistent 30 goal scorer in the NHL. Cole Perfetti, can he get to that level? Gabe Vilardi, of course, outstanding year in LA. He's got to show that, hey, I had my breakout season, my breakthrough season in the NHL. Let's not go backward now. Let's at least maintain what we did last year, if not build on it. It's going to be the challenge. And of course, he'll have to do it with a different team. I follow, like I say, I like his game because he can be good at both ends of the ice. Niederreiter to fit in. It's funny, if it's Niederreiter on the third line, all of a sudden you've got a chance for some maybe more offensive punch from that third line for the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll see how that goes. They could go Niederreiter second line and slide Perfetti down to the third line, or vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see where Bowness goes with that. And then down the bottom of the lineup, look, you got a kid in Morgan Barron who showed you his toughness last year. That was insane, playing through that injury. And he looked like someone beat the shit out of him trying to, save someone from robbing a convenience store, it looked like, or something. And that's what it looked like with Morgan Barron, and the black and blue face that he had during the playoffs. That he tried to play through it. So it showed you what kind of toughness, what kind of team player he is. Kupari, like I said, I think there's still a ceiling for him. Nemesnikov, it's not a bad forward group, all things considered, for the Winnipeg Jets. The issues are going to be a little bit toward the back end. When Josh Morrissey was out last year, that blue line fell apart. You're going to have to ask a lot from DeMello, and Pionk didn't have as good of a year, and Brendan Dillon being asked to take more minutes is not necessarily a great thing. He's good in a smaller capacity, not being asked to play against some of the better players on the opposing team. Nate Schmidt's not getting any younger. Sandberg, again, is a solid defenseman, but only a third pair for him, and plus we'll see if Logan Stanley bumps him out. There's still some decisions to be made there as far as how they're going to fit these defensive pairs for the Winnipeg Jets. And then, of course, in goal, Hellebuck, assuming he starts the season, you're fine. If he's somehow dealt, what do you get back in return? Because you assume a goalie's going to come the other way. And then does Laurent Brossoit get more starts? And look, Laurent Brossoit really played well when he got to Vegas, but he also had the Vegas blue line in front of him, 1 through 6, which is as good defensively as there is in the NHL. You don't exactly have that in Winnipeg. So probably a bit greater challenge for Laurent Brossoit to duplicate the results he had with Vegas. Delia, you'll only see if there's an injury to Hellebuck or Brossoit, or if Hellebuck gets dealt before the season or before the deadline. So, like I say, I like him up front. Blue lines are still a couple depth questions. And then goaltending with Hellebuck, it's pretty solid duo. Without Hellebuck, it's going to put more starts on Brossoit's plate. And even though he was great in Vegas, you don't have that blue line here. And you're going to see some Delia. And not sure that's necessarily a good thing, again, with a blue line that's not some of the elite blue lines in the NHL. So, again, keeping the puck out of the net, going to be a question mark for Winnipeg at times.
Yeah, I agree. And if you take away Scheifele and Hellebuck out of this lineup, it's a drastically different and much more worse lineup. So, um, looking into futures, it's tough. It's tough with the Winnipeg Jets to say, especially when it comes to the point total, because we don't know what this team is going to do. If they trade those two guys, then you want to hit the under. You want to smash that under. But if those guys are staying, maybe they add a couple guys. Maybe they get off to a hot start. Um, Winnipeg is an extremely difficult team here for me to bet future bets on. Um, Looking at the player props down below, Connor goals is at 36.5. He had 31 last year in 82 games. So I'm not sure I'd go near there. 84.5 for Connor points. He had 80 last year. I'm not sure I want to go there. Hellebuck wins is really interesting because he had 37 last year playing 64 games. If he is dealt, does he go to a contender? Does he go to a bubble team that's trying to get in. It's really tough to decide to bet his wins when you don't really know where he's going to be playing. The Vesna, again, same thing. Not sure where he's going to be playing. Who will have more points, Winnipeg or Seattle? Absolutely love Seattle at minus 130. I don't really like the price at minus 130, but I think it should probably be minus 170, minus 180. I think I really like Seattle. I really liked them last year. I really like them again. So I think Seattle finishes with more points than Winnipeg. That's the only thing I'm really confident on on this page because Winnipeg has major question marks this season. Ian, what are you thinking about future bets for the Jets? Does anything catch your eye?
Yeah, in fact, probably three. And you mentioned one of them. I mean, the Seattle price looks very, very generous, minus 130 to have more points than Winnipeg. I actually think they could go under 91.5 points. Let's be real. That was a collapse and against Vegas, the way it finished. They got just drilled in that first round series. And then the talk was they made the playoffs. And although let's also remember they almost coughed up even making the playoffs after the incredible first half of the season they had last year. But everyone thought Rick Bowness had eradicated the problems in the dressing room, the leadership issues and all of that. Well, apparently they came back because then Rick Bowness just rips them following that, saying we didn't come ready to play, no leadership, no will, no all of that he had that big spiel. So maybe there are still internal issues. And to me, this team on paper is not as good roster wise as last year. Teams in that division and in that conference are getting better, a lot of them. So the 91.5 under, I think is definitely something that's on my short list when it comes to point totals and trimming it down to the final list of bets that I'll actually be making. Winnipeg under is definitely on the short list. I will definitely be making that no to make the playoffs no plus 120. I think that's a good enough price to bet that because I just don't think this is a playoff team. Let's remember, they almost collapsed their way right on out of the playoffs after having this first half of the season where they were leading their division at one point. And yet here they were hanging on for dear life to make the playoffs. Any kind of inconsistency in the first half of this season, and they're probably not making the playoffs. And like I said, there's other teams, especially in the Central Division and in the Western Conference, that I think should be improved. And it's going to potentially bump out a team like Winnipeg from being one of those Stanley Cup playoff participants. So under 91.5 lean, definitely will like the no playoffs plus 120. And I think that Seattle should be closer to what you said, at least over minus 150 at the very least, but somehow they're not. So Seattle minus 130 to have more points than Winnipeg, definitely a value bet in my opinion.
Awesome. And that is the first part here of the Winnipeg Jets season preview show. And I will, of course, be breaking down with Ryan next. So don't go anywhere. And next up to talk Winnipeg Jets is Ryan at No Pepper Picks. Of course, check out the other videos that Ryan has been on as well so far to watch those videos as well. But today we are here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, and we will jump right into it here and start with additions and subtractions, which we have been doing with every show. And pretty even list here when it comes to guys out, guys in. Winnipeg got a bit younger. They got some nice young prospects here through the trades. What do you think overall about the additions for Winnipeg, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's important to take a step back and get some perspective on all of this. And what's going on here is this is Rick Bowness's second season with the Jets, taking over for Paul Maurice. And what he's done, it appears, or what he's doing is getting his people or his type of people on the team. And there's been a lot of turmoil in Winnipeg, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, like we've been talking about this guy maybe being traded for a long time. So like him being traded in the offseason for these three Kings is not a surprise at all. And what happens here is that the Jets get these three players who are kind of these hardworking, defensively responsible players. Velarde is just that. He's like a two-way player. He can play either wing or center, and he's defensively responsible. Iafallo is going to help out on penalty kill. He's a good forward. He was injured for part of last year, so he may get up to around the 20 goal plateau. So those are the big additions here. Blake Wheeler, it's no surprise that he's no longer with the team. He was kind of thought of as Paul Maurice's guy, so it's really no surprise that he's gone either, and that he got bought out and is now with the Rangers. Don't overlook Laurent Brossoit as the backup goalie. He had a nice run with the Kings in the playoffs. He's got some playoff experience. These backup goalies make contributions, and he's coming back to play with his former teammate in Hellebuck.
Yes, for sure. And how long will he play with Hellebuck? That is the question. Of course, we do see reflecting reports, but the talk of the town here and people project that the two guys I have here on the screen as the most important players for Winnipeg to re-sign may get traded, may not even get to this point. But assuming both guys are still on the lineup at the end of the season, how important is it to sign these guys and not lose them for nothing? Being Shifley and Hellebuck, and is there anyone else on this list that you think that Winnipeg should be signed here for next year?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Terry. Like the two important people are Shifley and Hellebuck on this list, and whatever happens there, the rest falls into place. In my opinion, Shifley goes. Um, he seems to be on the outs. He's got a minus 16 plus minus, so that it sort of lends to the fact that he may not be really Rick Bonus's type of player. There's been some controversy around him. He's been outspoken about the team. Going back a couple of years, there was that late hit on Jake Evans, and there's been sort of a black eye about that whole incident. So, in my opinion, he goes, and probably after the end of the season. Hellebuck is a little bit more interesting, and I think he is a bona fide superstar, and he wants to win a cup. I mean, all players want to win a cup, but he wants to, and he may want to try to get a crack at it, and Winnipeg may not be the place for him. Now, the Jets are kind of this win now team, and they're not interested in rebuilding. They're kind of retooling, and they want to stay in contention year after year. And it seems like that deals fall off, then it's possible these guys get traded along the way. I also think there's another possibility, and that is the Jets actually are buyers at the trade deadline, and they could actually pick up some players and try to make a Stanley Cup run, and they could be a tough out for a team in the Stanley Cup. But the rest of the players, I think, fall into place depending on what happens to Shifley and Hellebuck. Cole Perfetti is not your average third line winger. He's got some bona fide talent. He's a young guy, and he's an interesting player. Nito Niederreiter just got picked up from the Jets at the last trade deadline from Nashville. He's a good player and kind of a hard worker. Not really a finesse player, but more of a hard worker type.
Yeah, for sure. You were cutting out a little bit there, but it's all good. When you were saying about Connor Hellebuck getting a crack at a Stanley Cup, hearing the word crack and Hellebuck, how good would he look in a Seattle Kraken uniform? I think if the Kraken could somehow trade for Hellebuck, that would be a monster addition for the Seattle Kraken. We'll go to possible lineup here, looking at the possible lineup that is according to Daily Faceoff. This is what they have here. And overall, no big surprises. Connor Shifley and Ehlers on the top line. Perfetti, Velarde, Iafallo on the second line. What do you think overall about this possible lineup for the Jets here, Ryan?
Well, Kyle Connor is the obvious, really talented goal scorer here. He had 47 goals a couple of seasons ago. I think that was a fluke. I don't think he's going to be a 50 goal scorer, but obviously he's kind of the important player here. again, bringing up sort of this turmoil in Winnipeg. Um, Lowry on the third line was just named captain, and I think that's sort of a shot across the bow of Shifley, and it's basically Rick Bowness basically like putting leadership in the hands of his type of player, which is kind of this hardworking defensive minded center. So there's that dynamic is going on. I tend to think Niederreiter might be in that second line. That way, you get sort of that second line of all the newcomers with Iafallo and Velarde. But you know how it is with these lines; they're interchangeable. As I mentioned, Perfetti is really, he's a good goal scorer and he's got a lot of potential, and I don't think we've seen his ceiling. I like that third line. Mason Appleton is a hardworking player. He used to play with. He originally was the Jets, went to the Kraken, now back to the Jets. Um, don't know much about that fourth line. Kupari came over with the Kings. Nemestikov came at the trade deadline last year. Janssen Pjalby is an interesting player. He was with the Caps. Has some goal scoring touch. It's mostly been mired in the minor leagues, but he looks pretty good to my eye. So I think he's got some potential. The defensive core, it starts with Morrissey. He's the Norris division or the Norris Trophy candidate, and I think he's got a shot to win it actually. And I think this defensive core is perceived as a overpaid and underperforming core, but we know that Rick Bowness is a very defensive-minded coach. 2 years ago, the Dallas Stars were there was no team like them in the way that their style of defensive play, and Rick Bowness is going to bring that to Winnipeg, and he's making it happen. So this is last year it was the 8th team in the league in goals against average. And I think they probably improve on that. And I think they play a lot of unders this year, and I think they're involved in a lot of low-scoring games. And again, as we mentioned, Hellebuck may be the best goalie in the league. I think he's a bona fide Vezina Trophy candidate.
Yeah, for sure. Any team would probably want to trade for him. I especially think that Steve Yzerman, and because he's from Detroit, or from Michigan, so I'm sure Detroit would want to trade for him. But do you really want to trade? As you're saying, it could be the best goaltender in the league. Do you really want to trade him? I think Winnipeg should, if they can, try to find a way to keep him in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and that is like, what do they get in return for a trade with the best goalie in the league? I mean, you have to get a goalie back, right? So you have to start to think about what teams are willing to give up a good goalie for a better goalie, and it's a little bit of a predicament where what kind of trade you could make with Hellebuck.
It would have to be Winnipeg would be deciding they're moving on from Scheifele and they're rebuilding. Because if you're looking for a rebuild, Hellebuck at age 30, being a really, really good top tier goaltender, wouldn't help a rebuild. So that's the only way I could see them if they decide they want to rebuild for next year, then maybe they do move him. But looking at it here, future bets for the Jets. Of course, Hellebuck wins is there, and Hellebuck to win the Vezina is also there as a bet. And he doesn't have to stay with Winnipeg, obviously, for those bets to cash. So if he was to move there, he could still cash those bets. And I want to hear what you have to think. Who will have more points, Winnipeg or Seattle? I really like Seattle. I just don't like the price at -130. I think it's probably should be -160, -170 for Seattle. So I do think there is value. I just don't like the -130 price. But what do you think here for future bets for the Jets, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a lot of different outcomes for the Jets, and it is possible they could be better than expected. They could make a run in the playoffs. However, I like some of the other teams. If you're going to make a futures bet, money is better spent on other teams like Ottawa. We talked about Ottawa before, and they're a similar situation where they're kind of a win now team. But I think Ottawa is kind of making the right moves. So it's possible this could work out. It's possible they could be back in the playoffs again. But I just think your money better invested on other teams. And it's possible the wheels could fall off here. There's a lot of, clash of personalities, clash of styles. It's possible this doesn't work out well at all. So I don't particularly like, the President's Trophy, the division, and those kinds of bets. Um, I think they're, in terms of their division, there's a lot of sort of mediocrity. The Phoenix, the St. Louis, Chicago. It just, and I think Winnipeg is above that mediocrity, but I just don't see them winning, and I don't think they match up well against some of the better teams. I think Hellebuck winning the Vezina is probably a good look. There's kind of a leading group of candidates: Sorokin, Shesterkin, and I think Hellebuck has a pretty good chance. With the defensive style, um, you know, with his success of having already won a Vezina and been a runner-up, I think that's a pretty, that might be the best bet on this board. And also Morrissey won the Norris Trophy at plus 2,000. I think it's possible. I think there's a really good chance of that, but I think you would need a Cale Makar injury for that to happen. So it's a little bit of speculation as far as that's concerned. Now for the last one, I'm a Kraken fan, and it's hard to say what the Kraken will do this year. They're kind of a team that's playing with the house's money. They're not really like investing a lot in like short-term success. They're trying to build on something, and I think things lined up pretty well for them to make the playoffs last year, or to make a run in the playoffs. But they're not really adding a whole lot to their team this year. So I'm not sure I like this bet. And I also think that Winnipeg could add some players at the trade deadline. And Seattle's not going to do that, or, not likely to do that. They didn't do it at all last year. So I think that's sort of like the one wild card here is you could get a Winnipeg team that says, all right, this is our chance. We have cap space, we have capital. Let's make a trade at the deadline and get someone. They wanted to get Timo Meyer last year. There was some speculation, and I think they could make a big trade like that this year.
All right. Perfect. That is the Winnipeg Jets season preview show. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on again. And of course, we'll have you on the Seattle Kraken show as well, and maybe some other shows on before that. But make sure to follow Ryan at No Pepper Picks on Twitter. The link to his Twitter is in the description below. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this NHL season preview show. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as we continue on breaking down all 32 NHL teams, which will lead to the regular season when the Getting Wild with Terry and Friends NHL betting show will return. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, make sure to follow everyone in the description below that was on today's show to show them some support. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.